This happened about a year ago when I was driving home late at night from work. I usually work closing shifts, so it wasn't unusual for me to be on the road past midnight. The drive wasn't long, maybe 20 minutes, most of it on the highway, then a few back roads into my neighborhood. That night, the roads were almost completely empty. About 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed a pair of headlights behind me in the mirror. Nothing weird about that, but the car kept its distance perfectly, matching every lane change I made. At first, I brushed it off. A lot of people take that road at night, but after a few exits passed, I realized the car wasn't leaving. It stayed right behind me, the entire time. When I finally got a clearer look, I saw it wasn't a car at all. It was an old van, dark color, maybe gray or black, with one of the headlights dimmer than the other. I moved into the slow lane to see if it would pass. It didn't. It just stayed behind me. Same speed. I started getting uneasy. A few miles later, I took an exit I didn't normally take, just to test if the van was actually following me. It came right off with me, turning into the same back road. Now I was nervous. The road was narrow, lined with trees, no streetlights. I sped up a little, hoping to put some distance between us, but every time I checked the mirror, the van was still there. I tried slowing down to let it pass, but it stayed back, never getting closer, never dropping off, just trailing me. At one point, I pulled into the parking lot of a small closed shop. I figured if they were just going the same way, they'd keep driving. But the van pulled in too. It parked across the lot, engine running, headlights still on me. I sat there gripping the wheel, debating if I should get out or drive off. After maybe a minute, I put the car back in gear and pulled out onto the road again. The van followed. By this point, I was sure whoever was inside was doing it on purpose. I tried calling a friend, but there was no answer. I didn't want to call the police yet. What was I supposed to say? Someone was driving behind me? I decided to head toward the main road where there'd at least be more lights. I took another turn, hoping I could lose them in the side streets. But every turn I made, the van made too, always staying a perfect distance back. The weirdest part was they never tried to pull up next to me, never tried to run me off the road, just followed. After almost half an hour of this, I was back near my neighborhood. I didn't want them knowing where I lived, so I kept driving past my street. That's when the van finally made a move. As I passed a four-way stop, it suddenly sped up and pulled right up behind me. So close the headlights filled my car. I could see the grill in the mirror. I floored it down the road, my heart racing. The van stayed right on me, inches from my bumper. Then just as suddenly it slowed back down. I pulled into a gas station lot, thinking maybe I could run inside. But the second I did, the van drove past, only to circle back around and stop across the street, engine still running, headlights pointing right at me. I didn't move for a while. I just sat there, pretending to look at my phone, trying to think of what to do. Eventually, I pulled out of the lot again and headed toward the highway. The van followed. By now, it had been almost 45 minutes since I first noticed it. I'd tried everything I could think of: random turns, parking lots, speeding up, slowing down. Nothing worked. I finally decided I had no choice. I called the police and explained what was happening. They told me to drive toward the nearest station and stay on the line. As soon as I mentioned the police, the van's headlights disappeared from my mirror. It didn't turn off the road. It just wasn't there anymore. One second it was tailing me. The next it was gone. I drove all the way to the station anyway, shaking the entire time. An officer drove me back home afterward just in case. For the next few weeks, I couldn't drive at night without checking my mirror every 2 seconds. And even now, whenever I see a van on the road, especially an old one with uneven headlights, I still get that same sinking feeling in my stomach because whoever was in that van didn't just happen to be going the same way as me. They wanted me to know I was being followed. This happened a few years back when I was driving through rural back roads late at night. I was on my way home from visiting a friend. The drive was about 2 hours. Most of it was just dark two-lane roads, lined with trees and the occasional farmhouse. No streetlights, hardly any other cars. About halfway through the drive, I realized I was low on gas. My tank was nearly on empty. I hadn't seen a station in miles, and the next town wasn't for another 30 minutes. So when I spotted a flickering sign off to the right, I pulled in without hesitation. It was an old gas station, two pumps under a buzzing canopy, and a small store with its lights on. The parking lot was cracked, weeds growing through the cement. But the pump still had power, and the door to the shop was unlocked. I started filling my tank, but as I stood there, I realized how quiet it was. No crickets, no distant cars, just the faint hum of the lights overhead. When the pump finished, I decided to go inside and grab something to drink for the road. The bell above the door jingled as I walked in. The store was dim, shelves half empty, no music, no background noise, just the buzz of an old cooler in the back. At first, I thought no one was there. Then I saw him, a man standing behind the counter. He wasn't doing anything, just staring straight ahead. Not at me, not at anything in particular, just blank. I gave a nervous, "Hey," as I walked past. No response. I grabbed a bottle from the fridge and brought it to the counter. The man was still staring, his hands flat on the surface in front of him. I said, "Can I get this?" He didn't move, didn't blink. His eyes looked glassy, like he wasn't fully there. After a few seconds, I placed the drink on the counter anyway, pulled a few bills from my wallet, set them down, and backed toward the door. The man didn't even glance at the money. I pushed open the door and stepped out. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. Through the window, I could see the man's reflection in the glass. He was no longer standing behind the counter. He was at the door. I didn't hear him move, didn't hear a step, but his reflection was right behind me, just on the other side of the glass. I spun around. The store was empty. Counter unattended. The man was gone. I froze for a few seconds trying to figure out what I'd just seen. My bottle and money were still sitting there, but the store was silent, completely empty. I didn't stick around to investigate. I ran back to my car, threw it into drive, and sped out of the lot. As I pulled onto the road, I glanced in the mirror. The lights of the gas station flickered once, then went dark completely. No pumps, no store, nothing but blackness. I drove the rest of the way home on adrenaline alone. The next day, I mentioned it to the friend I'd been visiting. They told me that station had been closed for over 10 years. No one worked there anymore. And to this day, I wonder if what I saw was a person or something else that wanted me to stop there. This happened a few years ago, on a night when the weather was awful. I was driving back from a late visit with family, and a storm had rolled in just after midnight. The rain was heavy, the kind that makes it hard to see more than a few feet ahead, even with the wipers on full speed. The roads were slick, and the sound of rain slamming the roof drowned out almost everything else. The drive should have taken about an hour, but the storm slowed me down. The highway was empty. Just me and the occasional semi-truck plowing past in the opposite lane. About halfway home, I spotted something on the shoulder. At first, I thought it was debris, maybe a tree branch blown onto the road. But as I got closer, my headlights swept over a figure. It was a person, A woman standing alone in the pouring rain, holding one arm up as if flagging me down. I felt that pit in my stomach immediately. I don't pick up hitchhikers, especially not at night. It's just not safe. But the storm was brutal. She didn't have a coat or umbrella, nothing but a soaked dress plastered to her. Leaving her out there felt wrong. I slowed down and pulled over. She walked straight to the passenger door, opened it, and got in without asking. She didn't hesitate at all, like she knew I was going to stop. The smell of rain filled the car instantly. She was drenched, hair stuck to her face, water dripping onto the seat. But she didn't look at me. She just sat, hands folded neatly in her lap. I asked where she was going. She spoke softly, barely audible over the storm. She gave me the name of a road I didn't recognize. I nodded and started driving. The first few minutes were silent except for the rain hammering against the windshield. Every so often I glanced at her. She sat perfectly still, staring forward. Finally, I asked if she'd been stranded long. No response. I asked if she needed to use my phone to call anyone. Again, nothing. She didn't even move her head. It was like she hadn't heard me, or was choosing not to. I stopped trying after that. The silence in the car felt heavier than the storm outside. After about 20 minutes, I saw the sign for the road she mentioned. I turned onto it. It was even darker than the highway, a narrow, winding stretch lined with trees. No houses, no lights. My headlights barely cut through the rain. The longer we drove, the stranger it felt. This wasn't a residential street. There weren't even driveways, just endless trees on both sides. Finally, after maybe a mile, she spoke again. "Here!" Her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. I slowed down, looking around. There was nothing. No house, no mailbox, just a break in the trees with a dirt path leading into the woods. "Here?" I asked. She nodded slowly, still staring straight ahead. I pulled onto the shoulder and stopped. She opened the door, stepped out into the rain, and started walking toward the trees. I watched in disbelief as she disappeared down the path. No light, no house, just swallowed by darkness. I sat there for a minute, engine idling, trying to figure out what just happened. Then I put the car back in gear and kept driving. 10 minutes later, I finally let myself breathe. I told myself I'd just done a good deed, that maybe there really was a house down there I just couldn't see. But then I glanced over at the passenger seat. It was completely dry, no water, no mud, not even a damp spot. I slammed on the brakes and pulled to the side. My hands were shaking as I turned on the interior light and leaned over. The seat was bone dry, like no one had ever been there at all. The only thing out of place was a folded piece of paper sitting where she had been. I picked it up with trembling hands. The ink was smudged like it had been wet once. The writing was faint, but I could make it out. "Thanks for the ride." That's all it said. I drove the rest of the way home in silence, barely breathing, glancing at the seat every few seconds. When I got home, I left the note on my kitchen table. By morning, it was gone. I never found it again. And to this day, whenever it rains while I'm driving at night, I can't help scanning the shoulder, half expecting to see her waiting there again.